You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All righty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and I am joined, as always, by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Doing good. We got past divisional weekend. A couple good games, a couple maybe not so good games. But nevertheless, here we are. I mean, we probably have the true four best teams remaining. I know Buffalo would like to probably say otherwise, but you lose at home, you're not one of the four best teams, right?
Better get that refund.
Yeah, exactly. So, overall it was good. I thought that Philly Giants game was going to turn into the second coming of Georgia TCU. It got ugly quick in that game, and New York was down 14-0 before they even knew it happened. And really, the Bills were the same way, right? Like Cincinnati went up 14-0, like in the blink of an eye. I think Josh Allen had 3 snaps, and he was down 14 points. Like crazy. But it was a good weekend. I didn't see as much of the games live as what I would normally watch. I decided to play husband and dad this weekend a little bit. Imagine that. So got to hang out with the kids and kind of, go on a date night with the wife. Like, holy crap, what's this?
Oh, wow.
I know. High rolling, guys, let me tell you.
So that's good though. You gotta every once in a while you gotta play those roles.
Heck yeah, make up for all the time during college football season where I give up my Saturdays and Sundays to do nothing.
Parked in front of a TV. Yeah, exactly. Look, for 4 months out of the year, for 1/3 of the year. All right. I was. There wasn't really any surprises, I didn't think, in terms of how the games went this week, at least in my book. I figured that the Cowboys would cowboy. And while that game was close, it certainly didn't feel that close at times, especially towards the end. Like there was you could see the hope escaping from the Cowboys. And I thought that Jacksonville was playing with house money, and they just ran into the wrong thing. And they even tried to beat a Patrick Mahomes-less Kansas City squad for a little bit.
They were right in there right up until that fumble inside about 5 minutes left to go in that game inside the 5-yard line. Like they were. Yeah, they might have been down. I think it was 10 at that point, but they looked like they were going in, punching it for 7 to make that a 3-point game with about 4 minutes left to go in that thing. And then the fumble, and then the Trevor Lawrence turnover. And by the way, Alex, how happy were you when you had the Trevor Lawrence turnover there right at the very end? Because he had played interception free, and I know that was your prop that you'd called out last week. So you got the light hit on that one.
Yeah, turnabout's fair play. The gambling gods came back at me because a meaningless field goal is kicked with 30 seconds left. Meaningless field goal.
Somebody told you that they were going to cover. They were going to cover the 9
Jacksonville to cover. Yeah, that was not fun. I did not appreciate that. Doug Peterson became either the most hated or the most celebrated man, depending on what side of that line you were on, because that was a late cover, the late cover play, or it was the you've got to be kidding me play, because it meant nothing.
For the most part, watching the sequence of events that led into that thing, like it actually made, like from a call perspective and a play call
from a pure football standpoint, yeah, absolutely. You have to give yourself a shot, right?
What was it? They clock it on first down. They take the shot deep to Marvin Jones Jr. into the end zone on second, and then you try and pick up the first down on third down. You don't get it. You kick the field goal, right? Like from the sequence of events that they used to call that, because you had to hit on a Hail Mary anyway. Might as well try and take that shot on second down, instead of trying to get into like short and manageable, because you still needed two scores to get into that game to even tie it. So
yeah, I know it was a 2-score game and you were in scoring position. I understand kicking the field goal, but I didn't like it. I understand it, but I didn't like it. which prevented me from a perfect 4-0 against the spread this last weekend.
That's how I felt it going into that. And Kevin and I were talking about this a little bit before we went on air here. That's how I felt about the Dallas San Francisco game, where I had the only call that I had missed up until that point all weekend from what we did on last week's show was the Giants to cover the 7.5. Like I thought they'd get sneaky and have a backdoor cover, something like that as well. That it would be a touchdown game. Nope. And then
that's about right. Nope.
Nope is about right. And then I had the Dallas San Francisco one where I just was that one did not end well for me on any of those calls there at all.
That was pretty rough.
It happens.
I was good against the spread. I am terrible at over-unders. I am not great. And I put that on my love of points because it's so much more fun to root for points than it is to root against them. So
actually, had you gotten the under every single game, you'd have hit on every one of those games this weekend.
Yeah, I know.
So I went. I called the under in 3 of 4, and I was right 3 out of 4. So, but that Dallas and San Francisco, those guys, I tell you,
I nailed that one.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Turnovers, man. Turnovers once again, and it was Dak's bugaboo down the stretch.
Yep,
all those turnovers, and he played a clean game against Tampa Bay. We thought, okay, maybe, but I mean, maybe not both the turnovers, but definitely. What was it? The second one? Was it the second interception?
There was one of those that he threw that was just like,
that was just what are you doing? I believe it was the second one, but it's like, guys, you need your touchdowns instead of field goals, especially when your kicker has the yips, and you can't be turning the ball over.
Did you guys happen to see the governor of Texas,
Abbott?
Yes, Greg Abbott, famously in a wheelchair, sent out a tweet that says, "I swear I can kick better than the Cowboys kicker."
No, I didn't. That is awesome.
Well, he might not be wrong at that point.
Sure did. So, man, you got to feel for the Cowboys kicker who's getting trolled by the governor of Texas in a wheelchair.
The wheelchair-bound governor.
The wheelchair-bound governor of Texas.
Oh, man.
Good stuff. Fantastic tweet.
The yips are nothing to be messed with, I tell you. So, but any other thoughts here on the divisional round before we start looking at the conference championships?
Sucks Mahomes got hurt. It'll be interesting to see kind of what practice he is or isn't able to log this week. And then if he does play, how much mobility he has. This Bengals team they seem to just keep getting better as the season goes on, right? And this is what you want as a professional team, right? You want to be peaking going into the playoffs, and Cincinnati feels like they're just doing it. Like they kind of stumbled with their offensive line woes at the beginning of the season, and then it started to get a little better, but then Jamar Chase went down, and then they got Chase back, and they're still building off of it. And then right before the playoffs hit, right, and two or three consecutive games, they lose an offensive lineman, and so they have to make some more adjustments after they'd been pretty whole all year long. And they're playing their best football. And this defense, once again, come playoff time, has found a way to just pick it up another notch. They're dangerous. Like it is the team. It's the team that I would least want to face right now, only because they're so explosive on offense with the defense that is getting after the quarterback, right? Like we know what to expect out of the 49ers. That defense is really, really good, and their offense is methodical. It's not explosive, but it's methodical. Philly's offense is explosive, and their defense is good. Like, not great, but they're not getting after the passer very much.
It's not as good as it was earlier in the year.
No, but their secondary is so good. Like, you can run on them.
Right.
And that's where the Niners are going to have a big advantage coming up, is if they can ground and pound these Eagles, they're going to struggle a little bit. But if Philly's able to get a lead and you force Brock Purdy to the air,
right,
I think Philadelphia is going to hand it to San Francisco. Just the way they're built on the back end of that team, I don't know that they have the athletes to consistently win one-on-one. Like, they're not built with all pro level wide receivers. Debo does well, but they move him around so much to help him do well, right? Like, he doesn't just line up outside like an AJ Brown does, for instance, or Justin Jefferson, and beat you one-on-one. They move him around. And so it's gonna be interesting. Definitely both matchups are gonna be a hell of a lot of fun to watch this weekend. I cannot wait.
Well, and we saw Brock Purdy, have a little bit of the the some of the spots in the armor that seemingly, he just been doing so well. Dallas got after him a little bit on that one, and it certainly showed a little bit. And the Eagles can get after the quarterback here as well. Not maybe to the extent that Dallas can, but this is one of those that Brock Purdy, we're gonna have to see what really looks like here, and can San Francisco, keep that thing going. But yeah, it was a very interesting divisional matchup there. Any other thoughts before we actually head into the breakdowns of the conference championships here?
Let's do it.
All righty. So just to recap where we were at on the divisional round, Alex, you went 3-1 against the spread, 1-3 on the over/under, and 500 on the props, 2-2. I went 500 against the spread, 3-1 on both props and over/under. And Kevin, you went 500 spread, 1-3 over/unders, and 500 on the props. And so that's going to lead us into the divisional round here, the conference round. And we'll start off here with the Bengals and the Chiefs. And the Chiefs right now are favored by 1.5. 47 is the over/under on this game. Guys, what are your thoughts here?
I'm taking Cincinnati all day. All day. There is not a guarantee that Patrick Mahomes plays. If he does play, he is going to clearly not be at 100%. I just got done talking about how this Bengals team is super dangerous and on the uptick right now. I know last week I thought Kansas City would kind of be our Super Bowl team out of the AFC, or 2 weeks ago when we talked about that, whatever it was. I have changed my mind officially. So, Mahomes being hurt is all the difference. If he was healthy, I think that he would still have a hard time. Cincinnati, Joe Burrow does well against Kansas City. And with Mahomes being limited and or not playing at all, this is Cincinnati's game for the taking.
I agree with that. I am also taking Cincinnati. I'm riding with them. I selected them as my AFC winner last week in the show, so I'm still riding with them. And they have to be feeling good about the way that they are playing, but I think they also understand the task at hand because they were just there last year. So they know what it's going to take. They know that they are going into a hostile environment. I think that they understand. For what it's worth, both of these environments are going to be fantastic, right? Talk about fan bases that really bring it on every Sunday, but nevertheless championship Sunday. So I will go with Cincinnati here. The fact that I'm getting points is great because I think that they're going to win it outright.
Right, I'm right there with you guys. I think that this is Cincinnati all day. And Kevin, welcome to the Cincinnati side. We'll gladly take you on this side of the bandwagon here. So, but as far as the points go on this one, I've got the under on this thing. I think that this is going to be a 47's the mark on this one, and I don't know that we're going to see a ton of points put up on this one. This one feels like it's going to come down to almost kind of the shootout type of thing, where it's going to come down to the momentum play, like a 23-20 type of matchup. 24-21 is how I see this one kind of playing out, a field goal type of game here. So I'm going to take the under. Sneaky prop that I really like in this one, Samaje Perine to go over 15.5 rushing yards.
Ooh, I like that. I'm going to take the over on. Oh, I'm the odd man on this one. All right, sweet. I get to talk about the over. This is awesome. You'll see Chase Daniel do enough, right? Like, he can operate within Andy Reid's system. Huge game for Travis Kelce, right? I think this is a monster game for Travis Kelce because he is the security blanket for both quarterbacks. If Mahomes isn't able to be mobile, it is going to be on Travis Kelce to get open, or it's going to be a lot of the quick out stuff to Juju. Whatever. I didn't even look at the Marquez Valdez-Scantling prop, but it's probably under. Like I think already, if it's anywhere north of 50 yards, I'm taking the under and hammering that all day long, and I haven't even looked at it. So I like the over. I'm thinking somewhere along the lines of 31-27 Cincinnati. I do think we see some points here in this game. Kansas City does give it up. Their defense steps up come playoff time, but this Cincinnati team offensively is on a whole nother level than what Jacksonville is. Like, get your popcorn ready.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and there's a case to be made for the over. I am taking the under, as we mentioned, and the prop that I like is Mixon over 55.5 rushing yards. I do think that Cincinnati's going to want to try to control the line of scrimmage, try to keep whatever quarterback is on the other sideline off the field. So you do that by running the football and shortening the game. And I think that's what the Bengals do. So I've gone Mixon over 55.5 rushing yards.
Right. And the weather, too, I think is also going to keep the score lower on this thing. It looks like about 14 degrees at kickoff when this thing's all said and done. There is a massive correlation when you get to 20 degrees Fahrenheit and points scored in an NFL game. Lower the temperature, the lower the score tends to be, and 20 seems to be the magic mark for what that looks like. So
Bengals put up 27 in a blizzard last week. I have no worries about them. Kelce over 77.5 receiving. Sorry, I forgot to mention that when I was hyping the over.
Love it, love it, love it. We do have some comments coming in on this game, so let's take a look at these guys. Terry, welcome back to the chat, Terry. He's calling for Cincy 27, Kansas City 24, so he's kind of in that same vein you are.
I like it. It's the over. It's the over.
Yep.
I like it.
Aaron is saying that he has the Bengals. Welcome to the chat there, Aaron. And Jamie saying Joe Burr. It is going to be cold in Kansas City, and I think he's playing the Joey Ice right there. All righty, let's go Ohio. And Aaron saying the Chiefs about to be deleted. I think we're all on the same page here that the Chiefs are going down, which
okay.
It's scary when everybody's on the same page on this one.
It's very scary. I don't like this at all.
Right.
So this isn't our debate topic, right, that we talked about pre-show, but I'm going to toss this one out here anyway.
Okay.
If Patrick Mahomes plays and loses this game, that would mean in his 5 years as a starting NFL quarterback, he has made the AFC Championship in every one of those said years.
Right.
With only one Super Bowl championship.
Uh-huh.
Is he the new era of Aaron Rodgers?
Yes. Yeah, that's what it kind of comes down to. But we're still well enough early on enough in Patrick Mahomes' career that we could be that. But a lot of that goes back to that point I was making last week about salary cap hit, things like that. And to kind of pivot off that point there a little bit, if you were watching that game and you had Twitter open, the amount of people that were shocked and amazed and awed and, oh my gosh, what is Kansas City doing? He can't even stand up. Like, this is the future of the franchise. They need to get him off the field, and this is what you're paying $40 to $50 million a year for over the next decade, is for a guy to go out there and win these games in the playoffs. And I get that he's hurt, things like that, and that you want to have him there long term to it. But the trainers aren't going to let him go back out there after examining that thing and going, no, we've got a broken bone. No, we've got serious long-term damage here.
I'm not convinced they examined it.
Well, that could be too.
They took him into the tent. They shot him up.
They also
and they put more tape on there than anybody has probably ever seen on a quarterback's ankle.
They did that examination
like that, right? Like as soon as he takes it off, it went, whoa. Like, holy shit, I have a beach ball on my foot. Like crazy. So here's I think it's an interesting topic, right? 1 point for Aaron Rodgers. He is 27 years old this year, right? He is playing at the age of 27 years old currently. That is when Rodgers won his first Super Bowl. right? Because he didn't sit all that time behind everybody else. So
right.
I still think there's time to go, but man, oh man, like he has a lot of career left, but you are wasting so many prime opportunities with the team that you've had around him and with his ability and being to 5 consecutive conference championship games. That takes your toll, right? I mean, ask LeBron, right? LeBron, how many straight conference championship games did he get to? Like, I mean, just outrageous. And eventually it does take your toll holistically as a team, right? So it's an interesting thing because if he loses this game, I think that the rumblings will start, right? Like, is this a one-hit wonder? Do they need to blow this team up because they can't get over the edge?
Well, keep in mind he's actually made it to 2 Super Bowls. Aaron Rodgers in his career only got to that dance once.
Well, Marino got the one and lost it, and
never got back.
Right? Like, I mean, it's reminiscent of Jim Kelly.
A little bit, yeah. The other thing too is this, is Andy Reid just doing this dance again, right? Because he took the Eagles teams to so many of those NFC Championship games in Philly when he was the head coach there, and are we just seeing the repeat of this again? Like
these teams are so much better than those Eagles teams.
Oh yeah,
and those Eagles teams are
different.
Good, but the caliber of leader from Patrick Mahomes to Donovan McNabb. Sorry, I don't know where my guy McKnight are light years difference, right? Mahomes like wants the pressure and lives for that moment. McNabb got into the huddle and puked all over T.O.'s shoes.
That did happen.
So,
I think if Mahomes plays and doesn't win this week, I believe there's a pass, right? I believe there's a pass for this one. But there is starting to become a pattern. If he plays and they don't win, because he is, well, I think we would all understand that he is not 100%. I think the Kansas City medical staff, I don't know if you guys have seen that video or the gif of the security guard doing pat downs as people are going into the show, and he just kind of glances over top of him. That was the amount of medical examinations that kind of happened. He just 1, 2, all right, yep, nope, you're good. All right, see ya. And I think that Mahomes, look, I had this discussion with some of my coworkers about would you rather get there and lose? Actually, it was kind of the discussion that we had with TCU in Georgia. Would you rather get there and get blown out or lose on a heartbreaker? And I tell you what, I think I would rather still be there. So the fact that he's still getting to the conference championship games, I would much rather have that. And speaking as a Broncos fan who we've had a good run, right? Like we had good runs there with Jake Plummer, with Peyton Manning, with John Elway, right? Like we've had good runs where we've been to consistently being in the championship conversation. I can tell you it's way more fun to be in that position than it is to be in the position we're in right now. So
absolutely.
I understand the thought.
And
I understand. And it's a very great thought.
Yeah. And I do think you're right. He gets a pass short term, but think 10 years from now, right? Mahomes is 37. His career is winding down. You're not going to bring up the ankle 10 years from now. We will remember the ankle for the next year or two. But at the end of his career, they're going to say he started his career out making it to at least 5, possibly more, but at least 5 AFC Championship games and 1 Super Bowl to show for it. He no longer gets the pass 10 years from now.
Right. This even kind of echoes a little bit that same conversation we had last week with the Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins type of thing, right? Like this is starting to become a pattern, and what does that ultimately look like there? And
Cousins has never been anybody's franchise long-term franchise quarterback, though, right? Like the Washington football conglomerate of name-changing specialists, right? Because he was through all not all, a lot of the evolutions of it. But even the Vikings, I'm not convinced that the Vikings necessarily wanted Cousins. It was just the devil they knew.
Right.
Like, he was just good enough, and they realized we can't go fishing with the talent we have on this roster. We just have to build around it.
Right. And that's not what I'm saying is that, that those similar kind of comparison. I'm just simply saying that it mirrors kind of that same conversation we had last week from the standpoint that this is a repeatable pattern that Cousins, kind of blows it in the big game type of thing. But yet when Herbert was there and blew a 27-point lead, he kind of got the pass. And that's kind of the similarities that I'm drawing between those two conversations was the simple fact that, does Mahomes get the pass because of the ankle? Does he get the pass because of what we see on the field? Those types of things. That's where I'm drawing the similarities between the two conversations. So, Terry coming in saying that he doesn't think so. Back to your original question, Kevin, doesn't think so because he's more consistent than Aaron Rodgers. And then he says,
I'd argue that,
right? Think Joe Burrow will be the next Jim Kelly because if they make it to the Super Bowl, they're not beating the Niners or Philadelphia with that patchwork of an offensive line. There's a lot to be said of what the showing that they just did against Buffalo. Right?
There is, and I think the reason Burrow can't beat Kelly is because he won. Like, I mean, I guess we're in the same. What was it? Four in a row for Buffalo. 4 in a row for Buffalo with nothing to show for it.
Right. Couldn't get past those Niners or Dallas teams.
Right.
They couldn't.
I mean, I guess it's all possible, right? I mean, it is. It's all possible. And Burrow could be that the offensive line can't control injuries for any team. Right.
He'd be 2-0 in the Super Bowl, he says.
Yeah, 0-2.
Yeah. John Elway started 0-2. John Elway started 0-3.
Yeah, as long as you get one, you get out of that conversation, right? Like, you have to find a way to get one. And that's not easy to do, right? Because there are a lot of really good quarterbacks who, don't have any, let alone the opportunities for 4 like a Kelly did, or, 2 Mahomes, right? I mean, Russell Wilson's been to 2. He's 1-1. Aaron Rodgers has only been to 1. Like, goes back to Alex's point. At least he got there. Like,
right.
It's not Buffalo's fault that they ran into historically great Niners and Cowboys teams, right? Like, it wasn't just a better team those days. Yeah. Those were historically stacked teams of all-pro Hall of Fame caliber players. I guess the good news is for the Bengals is I don't think that that's who they're stacked up against between last year and this year. There are Hall of Fame caliber players on those teams, but it is not stacked like the legendary Niner and Cowboys teams of the early 90s.
Right. And Aaron says they're more likely to beat the Niners than the Eagles. No. So I think Aaron's right. I think they're a whole lot more likely to beat the Niners than that Eagles squad. So any other thoughts on this one or this game?
No, I took enough of your time, Derek. I'm sorry.
All right, let's go ahead and head on to our next matchup here. The NFC Conference game. We got the Eagles. We got the Niners. The Eagles favored by 2.5. Over under on this one, 45.5. What are your thoughts here?
Taking the Dirty Birds and the under in this game.
The Falcons didn't get here.
Something like a 24-21 type game. Like, I think it's just under.
Yeah.
But I think more ways to hit the under in this game, just because both teams have, A to A plus type defenses. Niners game plan is going to be to keep it on the ground, right? Like, that's what works for them. You are efficient. You want to keep the ball out of Purdy's hands as much as possible. You have Christian McCaffrey, obviously, Debo and Ayuk and Kittle, who's been chipping in here in the playoffs. But ultimately, I think the Eagles win this game. I think the home field does it for them. I think offensively, they have A.J. Brown, who will cause the Niners fits. We saw DK Metcalf caused the Niners fits, right? It is these big, true X wide receivers on the outside that the Niners do struggle with a little bit more. So I think Devonta Smith might have a little bit quieter game. But that being said, I think Goddard's going to find a way to get his. I think A.J. Brown's probably going to go bonkers. They're going to have to lean on him. And the San Francisco 49ers, here's my bold call for the game, guys. It has been, I believe it's a 24-game streak where the San Francisco 49ers have not allowed a player to rush for over 70 yards. I think it happens this weekend. And I think it's Jalen Hurts. I think his scrambling ability is going to be monumental for this Eagles team. I think he gets over 70 rushing yards and the streak is broken.
Well, that's good because your prop is what?
My prop is Jalen Hurts over 48.5 rushing yards.
So you feel real comfortable about that?
I feel great about it. Honestly, I feel really good about that 48.5. I know that linebacker core is fast. But this Eagles backfield is quick, right? Miles Sanders is no slouch. Kenneth Gainwell kind of came out of nowhere last week against the Giants. Boston Scott's a great goal line back who's been able to punch it in. You have a tight end who's more than serviceable and two really good wide receivers on the outside. This is probably the most equipped skill position team to combat a very physical, very fast 49ers defense because it is going to stretch them on all levels. They're not going to be able to kind of tee in and try and take something away.
Derek, I'll let you go next because I'm odd man out here.
Okay. Well, I'm going to side with Kevin on both the Philadelphia and the under on this guy. Again, this is one of those that these two defenses will match up well. Purdy, I think, is going to have the tough time dealing with that pass rush there. And the Eagles do just enough to pull this thing out. This, again, feels like a field goal kind of game. I think I'm kind of right there with you, Kevin, on when you were talking about this being like a 24-21 type of thing. Like the hook takes me on the under to this one. Like it's really, really close there. As far as the prop goes, I've got Jalen Hurts going under 250.5 passing yards. I think this is going to be a little bit more of a grinded out type of game, a little bit more of a defensive chess match going on here. And these teams are going to keep it close all game long.
So you guys think that this game, if it weren't for commercial breaks, would end in like 2 hours and 10 minutes because of how much running of the football is going to happen in this game?
I think there's a really good chance of that, right? Like if you're San Francisco, you have Mr. Irrelevant playing quarterback, right? Like, yeah, and he's done a fantastic job, right? Far better than what anybody would have thought coming into the season, what he could have done, right? Outside of the Niners organization, nobody thought that this guy was, except for, if your last name's Purdy, probably. Thought that he was capable of doing this type of thing, right? Like, there's a reason he was the last pick. And all of the other teams took 7 rounds of passing on him to not do that, right? Like, had other teams known that he was going to perform this well, how many of those do you think would have that are quarterback needy would have stepped up and drafted him? Carolina comes to mind.
Yeah,
Denver.
All those teams have a smart head coach.
So. And a lot of it is that he runs Shanahan's system incredibly well, but you're going to want to keep the ball out of his hands and not put it on your rookie quarterback to try and win this game. Same thing on Philadelphia, right? Like, go ahead. Tell us your shots.
I hear you. I'm taking the Niners because I called them 2 weeks ago to make it to the Super Bowl, so I will stick with my guns. I'm taking the Niners, and I'm taking the over in this one. And I'll refer you to the last time Jalen Hurts and Brock Purdy met up on a football field.
A long time ago.
It was a long time ago, but it was bananas. And it was one of the better college football games in recent memory.
Now, tell me, do they play defense in San Francisco, or do they play defense in Philadelphia? Because they don't play defense in the Big 12.
So the NFL defenses are slightly different from there are some dissimilarities from the Big 12 defenses. There are some dissimilarities.
They just let 11 guys on the field that are called defensive players, in the NFL, they actually play defense.
Just the Ole defense. Just Ole. All right. All right. So I'm taking the 49ers in the over, mainly because everything points to this game being low scoring. So why the hell wouldn't it be a high scoring affair, right? Like, why not, right? So I'll take the Niners. I'll take the over, and I will take Kittle over 46.5 receiving yards for reasons that Kevin mentioned earlier in the show. That Philadelphia's defensive backfield is filthy good. And so I will assume that because of that, the security blanket for Purdy, which it has been for a while, will be George Kittle. And even more so in this game where the pass rush will get to him if he does need to throw the football. Kittle's going to be, in my opinion, target, the first read. And if he's not the first read, he's certainly the second read after a quick glance at whatever the first read is, because that dude's going to be covered. So I'll take Kittle with the over 46.5 receiving yards. I don't understand why that number is lower than last week's number, but it is lower than last week's over-under number. And I still think he probably ends up with as much, if not more, than he had in the game against Dallas.
All righty. So a couple of comments coming in here. We got Terry saying that the Niners beat Burrow last season in Cincinnati with Josh Norman at DB. Bosa killed the Bengals offense. You're right there, Terry. I do think that the Eagles, though, can potentially neutralize the Bosa effect on this game here. Terry saying that he thinks the Niners 26, Philadelphia 24. He's anticipating a 50 burger on this one. And he's saying that Philly's last games, New York Giants backup and the Giants last week. Last week, the game against Dallas helped the Niners drastically. They're more physically and mentally prepared. Yeah, I mean, you could be right there, Terry. However, right, like the last two games for Philly have kind of been get-right games with Jalen Hurts coming back from the shoulder in Week 18 and a must-win to get the number 1 seed. They get the bye, and then they just dominate the Giants again last week. So very interesting stuff here, and this is a great matchup. This is a game I'm excited to watch here. Any other thoughts on this game?
No, this will be I think this game, both games will be more entertaining. I think if I had to pick one to watch, it would probably be this game, though.
Yeah, I think this one will be this one here is going to be a lot of fun. All righty, so we called our shots a little while ago as far as the Super Bowl prediction matchup and the winner, and time to revisit those. Now, to our credit, everybody has all of their picks still alive at this point, which I feel pretty good about that we've got all those picks alive there. Alex, you have called for San Francisco and Cincinnati meeting up, and there was San Francisco coming out the victor. Are you wanting to change any of those picks?
No, because I do think that the NFC is an easier road to get to the Super Bowl. Not that they aren't tested or, having to show what they need to do to show that they are, Super Bowl champion worthy. I just think that you have to expend so much more getting through the AFC than you do the NFC, that any AFC team, it doesn't matter who's coming out of the AFC. I'm still taking the NFC team just because the road to get there is so much more difficult than it is in the NFC for those AFC teams. So I'm sticking with San Francisco winning. What a story that would be. Mr. Relevant to potentially, you would have to assume, odds on favorite for Super Bowl MVP if San Francisco wins that game.
It is a quarterback award usually, so
typically is, yes.
Kevin, you called for Philly and KC to meet up with Philly winning it. Any changes you want to make on that one?
I would like to pivot to Cincinnati. The Mahomes injury has really kind of scared me off of Kansas City. So for that reason alone, really, I would like to pivot over to Cincinnati. However, I do still have the Eagles winning. So my champion does not change.
Okay. I also
does.
There you go. I called for Philly and Cincy to meet up on this one, and I think Philly is the more complete team. And so I think that they're going to end up pulling this thing out when it's all said and done. Interestingly enough, here's kind of a fun little tidbit, right? Like talked a little bit about the differences, and we put a tweet out on the the deal there that talked about you'll be careful who you call your shot on, all of that, listing out a lot of the cap hits, things like that with the quarterback, and the statistic that since 2000 there hasn't been a quarterback that's won the team hasn't won the Super Bowl where the quarterback occupies more than 12.61% of the salary cap hit on that one. There's only one quarterback left at this point that has more than that, and that's Patrick Mahomes with Kansas City. So, but funny enough, the Philadelphia-San Francisco game, both of those quarterbacks combined, if you took their percentages, just added it up there to it, are just over 1% of a cap hit type of thing combined between Purdy and Jalen Hurts. Absolutely insane when you think about that. So, anyway, that'll close us out here on this one. And guys, I do believe it's time to head on over to the debate side of things. You guys ready to do some debating?
Let's do it.
All righty. So here we go. The debating starts here. And the question that we have, can Dallas win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott as their quarterback? Kevin, you were the one that proposed this topic in the chat the other night. So I'm going to let you go ahead and kick this one off with your point. Can Dallas win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott as their quarterback?
No.
Okay.
Debate over. Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
no.
Exactly. And the problem is, right, like, it's not that Dak is a terrible quarterback, because there's not an option currently out there. If money were no issue, they would not be able to unload Dak and get someone better than Dak Prescott, right? Aaron Rodgers doesn't do anything extra for the Dallas Cowboys, in my opinion.
No.
So I don't think that does anything, right? Tom Brady, maybe, right? If they got rid of Dak and TB12 went to Dallas, I think that might be the best upgrade because it is Tom Brady. Now, outside of that, I don't think there's an answer. It's not going to be Derek Carr. It's not going to be Daniel Jones if he gets let go. It's not going to be Jimmy Garoppolo if he's on the move. Like, they're stuck with Dak for what it is.
Does Lamar tickle your fancy a little bit?
Not a freaking bit. Lamar Jackson. All right, I'm going to get off script because you asked that. Lamar Jackson is a wonderful fantasy asset to have. He is a great topic of conversation for what we normally do, right? Lots of fantasy, dynasty, redrafts, daily, that type of thing. Great asset to have in that forum. I'm not paying Lamar Jackson $25 to $35 million a year. I don't care what kind of escalators you put in it. He can't throw the ball.
No.
Like, he can't. He doesn't read the field well enough, and he cannot complete passes with accuracy. So, no, Lamar does absolutely nothing for me. So I think overall, Dak, not having Amari Cooper hurt them this year, right? They thought, yes, they had to get out from under some cap, but they really needed a dominant number two besides CeeDee Lamb to help with that. And you got glimpses out of 3 or 4 different guys. Dalton Schultz played well when he came back from injury, right? A little bit of a slow start, but then he kind of found his groove. And I don't know if it's Kellen Moore's play calling or Mike McCarthy's game planning, but it's hindering Dak. It's not helping him at this point. Like, it's not a good thing. Tony Pollard looked great this season, unfortunately for the broken leg this past weekend. So speedy recovery, Tony. We hope you get better soon. But I don't see this Cowboys team win a championship. They're not consistently, they're not mentally tough enough. And they also have a meddlesome owner who is not willing to be patient for anything and will just keep tinkering and tinkering and tinkering. And it's actually, it's subtraction by addition is what he's doing, right? The opposite of what the adage normally is. So I don't see this Cowboys team winning a championship with Dak. It just doesn't it doesn't feel Super Bowl worthy.
No, and so again, right? Like the Cowboys, if they were going to win a Super Bowl with Dak, it had to have happened this year or last year, right? Next year, his salary becomes a prohibiting factor for them. His salary cap jumps up to about $39 million. By the way, I'll plant my flag and call it right now that there won't be a team that wins the Super Bowl if their quarterback's cap hit is over $28.7 million. That's what I'm going to call the shot on, is that $28 to $29 million number. If you're paying your quarterback more than that, you're not going to have a chance at the Super Bowl. And that's a lot of what you got there, right? Dallas is going to have to do several things with their cap and with this roster in order to be competitive and try and win a championship next year. They have a just under $1 million of cap space right now as it sits. 970,000, I believe, is what it is. That is, and they've got several free agents that they're going to have to go out and get, right, and bring back if they want to keep them on there. Dalton Schultz, free agent, probably going to have to sign him for 15 to 16 million is what his going rate would be on the open market, somewhere in there. They can't do it with the way they're sitting right now. You've got Zeke's contract still on the books. That is a massive deal that you're probably going to have to rework to try and be able to sign some other pieces there. Who knows if he's willing to rework it. Tony Pollard is a free agent. You're going to have to bring out the bag or franchise tag him to get that job done. Leighton Vander Esch, another free agent there. They have several key players that were makeup of this team that are free agents that they're going to have to re-sign or bring in other players to do it. And quite frankly, they don't have the draft capital to go out and build around that as well. Not only that, looking down the road and towards the future, they're going to have to manage some things completely different in order to stay in a championship type of window, because Micah Parsons is not going to be on his rookie deal forever. Tyler Smith, who they had playing left tackle almost all season long, is not going to be on his rookie deal much, forever either. Both of those positions are going to demand marquee premium dollars to keep those guys in town and keep them at their position. So right now, no, there's zero chance that they're going to do it. And again, Alex, I got to side with Kevin on the Lamar thing. No, and quite frankly, I don't want to see Lamar overthrowing CeeDee Lamb 20 yards down the field and overthrowing him by 10 or 15 yards every time he drops back to do it. Remember, Daniel Jones had a much better pass completion percentage than Lamar did this past season, and we all thought Daniel Jones was a complete and total bust. And was not able to throw the ball, complete things on time. And he outperformed Lamar passing the ball by a mile this season. With again, they were bringing guys in on the street to try and play wide receiver. Not much different than what the Ravens were doing, but again, right, like similar situations. One guy excelled, the other guy overthrew his receivers on a deep shot almost every single time.
So we have seen now 7 seasons. Essentially, we've seen 6 full seasons of Dak Prescott. Mm-hmm. Okay. He had 5 games that he played in 2020. Obviously he had the very gruesome leg injury, and then 12 games this past season. So that's, put those together, there's your 17 for one full season now. Every other year he's played all 16 games, including that rookie season. And if you guys remember that rookie season, the Cowboys went 13-3. Dak burst onto the scene as a 4th round pick out of Mississippi State. Nobody really knew, what was going on. Do you remember the offensive line for that Cowboys team and how historically good that offensive line was? That was the reason that the Cowboys were 13-3. It wasn't because of Dak Prescott. It was not because of Zeke Elliott. It was because that offensive line was able to protect a young quarterback longer than any offensive line should be able to. And it gave Dak time to decipher what he was seeing in front of him. That line hasn't been the same since. The Cowboys went 13-3 that year. The next year they went 9-7. They lost key pieces off that line. He won 10 games in 2018 as a starting quarterback. He won 11 games in 2021 as a starting quarterback. Every other year, 9-7, 8-8, 2-3, 8-4. I'll give him 10 games for the one season. But it is so much easier to win in the regular season. It's not easy to win in the regular season, but it's much easier to win in the regular season than it is to win in the postseason.
Right.
And we have seen some astronomically boneheaded plays out of Dak Prescott when it matters most. So my answer, can the Cowboys win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott, is no. And it's not because Dak Prescott isn't good. He's good enough, right? He's good enough to get you into a spot, but he needs to have great around him. And right now he doesn't have great around him, and he doesn't have an owner that'll put great around him because, as Kevin said, there is a meddling that happens, a tinkering that happens. How many owners, and for as good as Jerry Jones is for the league, for the sport of football in the deals that he has brokered, the TV deals that he has brokered for the league, the amount of eyeballs that he's been able to get on the league and how a driving force he's been in that. As an owner, he has not been very good over the last 20 years. I'm sure you guys have seen the stat. What was it? That Jalen Hurts has been born, played high school football, played all of his years at Alabama, transferred to Oklahoma, and then has played a couple years in the NFL, all in the same time span that since the Dallas last won an NFC Championship.
Right.
Been 20 some odd years since Dallas has won a championship. It's not going to be. Look, if the Cowboys don't win, it shouldn't be Dak Prescott's fault. It will be because he's the quarterback. He's the only guy, aside from the center, who touches the ball every play on offense. But Dak Prescott will not win a Super Bowl as the Cowboys quarterback.
Yeah, unless they're although the Dallas is pretty content letting Zeke be the center.
As we've seen. That and how did that work out for them? That worked out as well as that Indianapolis fake.
Right.
What was that? The fake punt or whatever that they tried to do, and they shifted everybody, and there was two guys. It was bad.
Yes.
It's just there's a level of boneheadedness that I think is accepted by the ownership on down. That the attention to detail and look, it takes a special person to be the coach of the Cowboys because you have to deal with Jerry Jones, right? You have to deal with the Jones family. You can't escape that. You have to deal with an owner who goes and talks to the media immediately after a game, and he doesn't even have, all of the information. You have to deal with not being the smartest person in the room, which we know a lot of these NFL coaches, that is a role that they play very well, is being the smartest person in the room. And so when they are not allowed to be that, that's a tough gig. You are constantly looking over your shoulder. No matter what he says to the press, you are constantly looking over your shoulder. And it doesn't come from a space of competitiveness. I think it comes from a space of pettiness, in my opinion, that, if Jerry Jones wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, you're out of a job. That just is how it feels.
Steinbrenner approach, right?
Yes.
Right. I get yeah. I get what you're saying.
For Steinbrenner's teams won.
Well, that's also true. I get what you're saying, but Jason Garrett had a job far longer than just about anybody else thought.
Because he knew the role. And
I understand.
And look, there's something to be said for somebody who can play the role that needs to be played. And Jason Garrett played that role. And don't get me wrong, Jason Garrett's very smart and he's a good offensive mind. And truth be told, I've enjoyed him as an analyst on the NBC broadcast. He's very insightful and he understands what he's talking. That dude knows a lot of football. Coaching has not worked out for him outside of, the OC job that was in New York, and that was just destined to fail no matter what. And and then, being the Cowboys head coach. The Cowboys are in this rut, and I think of it like an NBA team, right? We've seen this in the NBA where the NBA teams, they will tank to get that good draft pick because one player does make such a difference. That's 20% of your lineup. One player can make a huge difference. In the NFL, if you get stuck in this loop of good, it is hard to break that loop. The Vikings are doing it right now, and they've done it with 2 head coaches, right? They were good, and they were good enough that they just didn't quite get the level of draft pick that they needed, or maybe they missed on a couple drafts, or they do get a good player in Dalvin Cook, but that doesn't make them any better. It just makes them more gooder, right? Like, so
don't worry, the Broncos can't figure that one out.
Right.
The Texans, apparently.
So and there's a difference of being bad and drafting bad, which those teams have done. But just this level of good. And I think secretly Jerry Jones is okay with being good, because no matter what, good still sees money come in, and good still sees AT&T sold out every Sunday, and good still sees jerseys going off the charts, and good's going to see this salary cap go up. And good will see the Cowboys playing at least a couple primetime games because they're America's team. Like, good is okay if you're okay with good. And I think the Cowboys are okay with good. Dak is good.
I was hoping you were going to find like a way to say good like 3 more times in there. So
I thought about it. Okay.
All right. Terry saying that they can win with Dak, but he can't be the driving force. And I think that sums up the what we've said there very well, that he needs a lot of help around him and needs the right situation in order to win. And, none of us think that Dallas is necessarily willing to do that right now. So,
but if he goes somewhere else, does he win?
Again, it depends, right? Like, yeah, it's interesting, right? Like we all had written Geno Smith off a long time ago after he left the Jets, right? Like, very much wrote him off. And this year he was a top 5 fantasy quarterback. Like, it very much depends on what system you're in, right? Everybody had written off Brock Purdy. When that many draft picks go before you, and sure enough, right? Like,
Tom Brady was a 6th round pick,
right? 199th. There was 189 or 198 picks before him, right? Like, there was a whole bunch of people that have passed, and we've seen that, time and time again, right? There are more undrafted players in the NFL Hall of Fame than there are first rounders, right? Like, there's a lot to be said around those things on that, but especially with the quarterback, you don't win championships by being the only show in town, or having to do that, right? We saw that play out here in Denver for many years with John Elway, where he was electric. He would get a team there, but it wasn't until you brought in Terrell Davis, you brought in a run game, you brought in great defenses to be able to get you over the hill to finally win a championship, right? To finally make that one happen. We saw that with Peyton in 2013, absolutely historic offense, and they didn't have the defense that could get it done in the big game, right? Like,
I didn't realize this at the time, and I haven't done much research into it because I was I just a kid, wasn't really into looking at what salary caps were when the Broncos were on the run there in the late 90s. Evidently, Denver did some funky stuff with the books those years.
Yes, they did.
Yes, they did.
which allowed them to do that. So maybe, I mean, if Jerry Jones is willing to do some funky stuff with the books,
they're going to have to just to field a team next year, man.
That's fair.
like I just covered that they got less than $1 million of salary cap heading into this next season, and they've got a lot of departures that are going to be made. And you still got to sign all those rookies that you're going to draft. So you got some problems that start with the salary cap, and that's even with it going up to the $225 million or whatever it's going to be. That's almost $20 million, almost a $20 million increase from last year to this year. So, all right, I think that kind of wraps it up on that one there. Real quick, let's just kind of go around go around the horn here and hit it up. Another kind of topic that we had talked about here. Is Trevor Lawrence right now a top 10 quarterback in this league?
Not yet.
I don't know about today. He's a top 10. I think he could be I think you could put him in the top 12. But this time next year, I think he'll be firmly cemented. The growth that Trevor Lawrence showed from basically week 9, 8, 9, whatever, through the end of the season was extraordinary. We watched him grow up every single weekend without a true number one receiver, right? He used his tight end. He used Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones kind of got sprinkled in. If Calvin Ridley comes back, and Calvin Ridley is dedicated to football and is kind of conquered his mental health situation that he was dealing with, that gives him a true number one. And this team becomes very dangerous with a young ETN, a really good slot player in Christian Kirk, and a true alpha in Calvin Ridley. Hopefully they're able to keep hold of Evan Ingram. I don't know that he's going to stay in Jacksonville. I think for Evan Ingram's purposes, I hope he stays there. Like, I hope he stays there. Like, he had his by far best career or year of his career. And I think Doug Peterson had a lot to do with that. And I hope that it's not just about the money, but at the same time, you only get so many paychecks in the NFL. So I do understand him going for the most bang for his buck. But selfishly, I'd like to see him back in Jacksonville. This team will be fun to watch next year, guys. It really will be.
Can we keep in mind, Doug Peterson made Zach Ertz what Zach Ertz is, right? Like, for the brief window that was Zach Ertz. When it comes to tight ends, like that, Doug Peterson understands the value of a good pass catching tight end in an efficient offense. So, I mean, that's there. I agree with you, Kevin, that Doug Peterson, I believe, is the reason why Trevor Lawrence will be a top 10 quarterback next year. I don't think he's there yet. He played extremely well down the stretch. And I think it took 8 or 9 weeks to figure out what Doug Peterson was trying to coach into him. I think it took 8 or 9 weeks for everybody to kind of figure out. You know, we think that all these guys do is eat, sleep, and breathe football. And for a majority of them, that is what they do. And it is their job, and they should be good at it. It's still not easy to get, 11 people. And then let's go even further beyond that, because you've got to get the whole offense, 25 people all on the same page, all at the same time, in a game where improvisation is a lot more than I think a lot of people give credit to. And there is a lot that goes on in order to be a good, a good, highly efficient offense. So I think it took the 2 months of Trevor Lawrence working with Doug Peterson and figuring it out, and then something clicked. And they looked like a completely different team from the first 2 months of the season for the last 2 months. So I don't think that Trevor Lawrence is a top 10 quarterback right now. I think there would be teams that would be happy to have Trevor Lawrence. And then there would be teams that would be like, no, we're good. We've got our guy. And I think that there are 10 of those teams that are like, no, we're good. We've got our guy still. Mm-hmm. But I do think that number shrinks if Trevor Lawrence continues on this trajectory that he showed the last 2 months of the season.
Yeah, I could see that. Alrighty, guys. Well, any other thoughts here or final thoughts?
I don't believe so.
Go Niners, I guess, since I took that. And I'm nervous how we all think that Cincinnati is gonna come away with this one.
Yeah, that's always one of those that group think starts making me question that.
I hope we all look like geniuses next Tuesday when we convene again.
Right, absolutely. So, guys, Alex just said it. You'll see us again live next Tuesday, 11 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back here recapping those games. We got another fun. We'll have another fun debate type of topic cooked up for y'all, as well as we'll start getting into some SB talk, some of that old SB talk coming through as well. Anyway, you can hit us up on all the socials: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Good Old Boys FF. Make sure that you're doing us a favor. Head over to the YouTube channel, click that subscribe button, ring that bell. We got lots of great off-season content coming for you. Help you guys start getting that leg up on both your dynasty drafts and with the rookie content we got coming your way, as well as all of those player profiles when we get deep into those teams and really get it so that you can try and win draft day for your fantasy league. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm Derek. Have a good one, y'all. Be safe. Toodaloos.